Hello, this is Cliff, and this is a one-person, one-take video on keeping your plants alive in cold temperatures. Having lived in Idaho here for 30 years, I've got a little bit of experience with this. What we got right here is a couple of giant pumpkin plants. There's two of them in there. One of them will be removed soon. Also in there is a couple jugs of water. And so this kind of leads to my elements of protecting your plants in cold weather. So what this plastic thing is what I would call a barrier. It protects the plants from wind, even during the day. And that's about all. It doesn't provide any insulation at night, or very little. The water jugs are what we would call a heat buffer. Okay, so we've got a barrier, we've got a heat buffer. And then at night, if we're going to get, below 50, maybe 45, I will put a sheet and a blanket over this whole thing. Okay, and that's what we would call an insulator. Okay, so we have a barrier, we have a buffer, a heat buffer, and we have an insulator. We'll walk through the raspberries here on the way to the tomato garden. I think it's a little windy, but it's okay. You're tough, you'll get through it. Just last night we planted a whole bunch of field pumpkins, and each of those white jugs, that's a barrier for the field pumpkins. Now I don't have the resources to provide an insulator and a heat buffer for each of those. Although I do at night, if it was going to be seriously cold, I have about 60 sheets or blankets in the shed, and some of them at least will be dedicated to protecting those. So over here, this is new to me this year. This is kind of a white foam material, spongy material. If you lift this up, okay, there's a cucumber plant in there, and that plastic bag full of water, that's my heat buffer. That is toasty warm, and that's plenty of water. You need a nice volume of water, or whatever it is, for your heat buffer. And this white thing is both a barrier and an insulator, so it can work pretty good. The only problem is this is not big enough for tomatoes, at least unless they're, if they've got any size at all. A little bed of onions here. We sure like these plants that don't really require any special help. So over here, my tomato garden, I've got over 30 plants here, and they've been in the garden for several weeks. And here's some more examples. This is called a wall of water, and these little cells are filled with water, at least to some degree. There's actually a broken cell there. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not holding any water. And that's one of the problems with these, is they get old, they don't hold water, and then they get unstable and they fall over. And that can damage your plant, usually not too much. But the biggest problem here is my plants have outgrown these. Almost all of them are popping out the top. And if we were to get freezing temperatures, that would touch them. Now, if we're going to get freezing temperatures, I'd put these buckets on them. And if we were going to get anywhere near freezing, I'd put the buckets on them. If we were going to get for sure below freezing, I would be putting blankets and sheets and buckets on them, and maybe a big tarp over the whole thing. Because the bucket itself, remember, that's a barrier. It's not an insulator. But the nice thing about these walls of water is they're all 3-in-1. It's a barrier, It's got a heat buffer with the water in it. This really needs more water. And it's an insulator because it's wrapping around the plant that way. Now, we had a night maybe more than a week ago, where we got down, supposed to be in the mid-30s, it got into the mid-20s, and I was not prepared. Even though I have a lot of experience, it doesn't really do you any good if you don't actually do it, right? So I had these here in the tires because the plant was getting so big, and this plant sustained some damage, more than I'd like. What I would do is put the sheets, blankets over it if it was, at night, if it was anywhere near getting cold. But now I've got a heat buffer in there. I've got one of these bags of water in here, and I've got another jug of water. And but at the time, I was not prepared. I did not have those in there. And so because I was lacking an element, that plant sustained some damage, much more than I'd like. It may come back, but I hate the fact that I did that to this plant and did it to another one, because it was in a bucket that had the bottom cut out of it. I didn't have any heat buffers in there, even though I had an insulator and I had the barrier, because I had no heat buffers. Well, so that those two plants were set back, and it's a shame because you go to so much work to do that. You don't want to do that to your plants. Over here, a couple more giant pumpkins, and these have got bigger little houses. It's got the barrier there, and then any night it's anywhere near freezing. If they say it's going to be 40, I pretend it's going to be 30, and I cover them up. Inside there they've got water as a heat buffer, and if it's going to be especially cold, anything below 40, I will turn on some lights, stick some lights in there, and the light will provide a little bit of heat through the night. Here's an advanced one. It's got a little lid that automatically opens when it warms up and closes at night, and it's filled with water. You got all in one right there. But again, the problem is, like usual, I'm way too early, and my plants are outgrowing, their protection. But I want to have more than a 2-month growing season. We just got to have more than 2 months, right? So we got to start early. Hopefully this helps. Until next time, thanks for watching.